These war films didn't spark debate. They sparked riots, bans, death threats, even a hostage crisis. One made people vomit in the theater, another got France to ban Stanley Kubrick for 20 years, and one ended up as the most savage film in history. This is the stuff governments tried to erase, and we're digging it up. This one's not just controversial, it actually sent people running for the exits. The Painted Bird is a nearly 3-hour black and white film from Czech director Václav Marhul, adapted from the novel by Jerzy Kosinski. It follows a nameless boy as he drifts through Eastern Europe during World War II, encountering torture, murder, and mutilation in what amounts to a medieval wasteland under Nazi rule. There's no sentimentality here. It's slow, brutal, and extremely precise. Critics called it beautiful and sickening in the same breath. The cinematography is immaculate. Every frame looks like a still photograph, but the content is pure human depravity. The most infamous scene shows a man having his eyes gouged out with a spoon. That's where many viewers decided they'd seen enough. When it premiered at Venice Film Festival, media reported people falling over each other trying to leave the theater. The Sun ran with the headline, "Sickened filmgoers brawl to escape premiere." The Daily Mail called it a panoply of depravity. Marhul stood by it. He said he wasn't interested in whether it was literally true. He cared about whether it was truthful. He said, yes, it's fiction. So what? Every book in the world is fiction, from Ernest Hemingway to Victor Hugo. But the fiction should be real. And what's going on in my movie, and what's going on in the book, is going on around the world at this moment. This very second, children are being killed, murdered, abused, burned, in Mali, Syria, Afghanistan, everywhere. T.F. Mao's Men Behind the Sun is a historical film that plays like a horror movie, and it might be the most controversial war film ever made. It came out in 1988, well after the peak of exploitation cinema, but it pushed things so far that even veteran gorehounds were caught off guard. The film focuses on Unit 731, the infamous Japanese military unit that conducted human experimentation in China during World War II. It doesn't look away. There are no cutaways. Everything is actually shown. Vivisections, exposure tests, frostbite, pressure chambers, all of it in full. The film even includes footage from a real autopsy of a child, which still sparks outrage today. The director claimed this was meant as an educational film, not exploitation, but it didn't land that way. In Japan, the backlash was immediate. He received death threats. In Australia, the film was banned, and critics around the world condemned it for its unflinching content, including documented cases of animal cruelty on screen. Still, Men Behind the Sun remains one of the only films to directly depict Unit 731 and its war crimes. Under General Shiro Ishii, Unit 731 is estimated to have killed around 250,000 people through medical experiments, often performed on Russian, Chinese, and Allied prisoners without anesthesia. At the end of the war, the United States granted Ishii immunity in exchange for his research. Soldier Blue came out during Vietnam and did not bother hiding what it was about. A brutal western that ends in a full-blown massacre of Cheyenne villages by U.S. cavalry, graphic, violent, and absolutely intentional as a Vietnam allegory. At a preview screening before its U.S. release, people reportedly started chanting, "Burn the theater," during the final scenes. The ending shows women and children being mutilated by American soldiers, and it pushed boundaries that had never been crossed on screen before. Critics were split. Some praised it for taking a stand, but others went after it for being too violent. British censors weren't subtle. They cut out entire scenes. When it aired on UK television in 1980, they straight up removed the entire massacre sequence. It didn't air uncut until 2002. Other countries followed suit. Germany released a trimmed version. Australia initially refused classification. In the US, it flopped, partly because of how aggressively controversial it was. American Legion groups and other protesters called it anti-American, and the backlash forced the distributor to tone down the film's marketing campaign. The director stood by it. He called it an indictment of real US atrocities, but that didn't stop the outrage. One critic labeled it the most savage film in history, and it's stuck with that label ever since. This war drama set off full-blown diplomatic threats before it even hit theaters. Atom Egoyan's drama about the 1915 Armenian genocide was already in hot water before a single frame was projected. The Turkish government and nationalist groups tried everything to stop it. One Turkish state minister went public and called it a shameful production, and there were open threats of legal and diplomatic retaliation. Turkey allegedly pressured Cannes Film Festival to keep it out of competition. Once the film was released, Turkish nationalist groups in the US tried to block distribution, picketed theaters, and flooded Miramax with complaints. The Assembly of Turkish American Associations pushed to keep the film off screens entirely, calling it one-sided. In Turkey itself, the film was effectively banned. No distributor would touch it. In France, where the Armenian genocide is officially recognized, screenings were disrupted by Turkish diaspora groups handing out propaganda or trying to shut down showings. Egoyan got hate mail. Some of it included death threats. His retrospective in Turkey was cancelled. The Turkish government made sure Ararat would never screen in their theaters, and Egoyan became persona non grata. This one's a Libyan-funded war epic starring Anthony Quinn as Omar Mukhtar, the resistance leader who fought Italian occupation in the 1920s. The problem? It showed what the Italian military actually did during their colonial campaigns: summary executions, use of poison gas, and the brutal suppression of Libyan fighters. Italy's government banned the film outright. It wasn't shown on TV, wasn't allowed in theaters. Prime Minister personally blocked it, saying it damaged the honor of the Italian army. That ban lasted decades. Italian television didn't air it until 2009. The reaction was all about control. Italy didn't want to deal with its colonial past, and the film's portrayal made that impossible to ignore. Even though Lion of the Desert was a high-budget international production with Western actors and English dialogue, it never got major festival attention, because Italian officials threatened diplomatic pushback if it was screened anywhere prominent. Director Mustafa Akkad said Italian journalists were hostile from the start. Over time, though, historians came around. They acknowledged the film's accuracy, but for a whole generation, Italian audiences couldn't legally watch it. No film about historical wars and religion has ever caused quite what the message did. It was an English-language epic about the life of Prophet Muhammad, and even though it never showed Muhammad on screen, rumors spread that Anthony Quinn was playing the Prophet. That lie sparked a full-on hostage crisis. In March 1977, a year after the movie came out, a militant black Muslim group stormed 3 buildings in Washington, D.C., killed 2 people, and took 149 hostages. Their leader demanded the film be banned and its negatives destroyed. It took 39 hours and a team of Muslim diplomats to bring the siege to an end. But the controversy had started way before that. Saudi Arabia forced the production to move during filming and leaned on other governments to block release. Egypt's Al-Azhar University first approved the script, then turned around and condemned the final cut, calling it offensive. That led to bans in Egypt, Kuwait, Iran, and Iraq. The film was picketed in the US and UK by some Muslim groups, while others defended it for its respectful approach. But the backlash kept the film out of theaters in many countries for years. Eventually, the message gained respect. It's now seen by many as a carefully crafted, historically grounded depiction of Islamic wars. But it got there the hard way, through protests, censorship, and one of the most shocking film-related incidents in modern American history. Admittedly, the most controversial movie of John Wayne, and there's no shortage of movies in his filmography that didn't age well. Released right in the middle of the Vietnam War, the Green Berets was unapologetically pro-war. It was propaganda from frame one, and people knew it. Protesters didn't wait for the reviews. At the London premiere, 200 people picketed the theatre. In Sydney, they rallied in the streets. In Rome, they burned effigies of Uncle Sam. Lebanon banned the movie outright. Even Switzerland, neutral as it gets, stopped showings over concerns it was offensive political messaging. The backlash was global, and it didn't stop at the borders. In the US, peace activists disrupted screenings. Critics shredded it. Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars and called it cruel, dishonest, and a disgrace to the thousands who'd already died in Vietnam. The New York Times said it was stupid, false, and rotten in every detail. The Pentagon loved it. So did the military bases. And a chunk of the public saw it as patriotic. And John Wayne leaned into the backlash, saying critics overreacted and only helped boost the film's box office. Kubrick's grim portrayal of French soldiers executed for cowardice so offended authorities that it was banned for decades. France banned Paths of Glory outright from 1957 to 1975. The French government considered the film anti-military and refused to allow screenings. They extended that ban to French colonies and even pressured neighboring countries. In Belgium, theaters had to run a disclaimer saying the story was fictional and not meant to insult the French army. West Germany refused to screen it during the late 50s. Switzerland held off until 1978. Franco-era Spain banned it until 1986. The US military blocked it from being shown on American bases abroad. That was the Cold War climate. Too anti-authority, too embarrassing for allies, and too soon. The ban meant that for nearly 20 years, most of the world never saw it. Kubrick was barely into his 30s when he made it. Kirk Douglas led the cast and fought to get the film made. He called it a picture that would always hold up, and he was right. Only after the 1970s did Paths of Glory start getting wide international release. Long after its initial release had provoked international bans and unofficial blacklisting, by that point it had already secured its reputation as one of the great anti-war films ever made.